Hello again. We are back in our world tour, learning about staple foods and where they grow and why they grow in those areas. So, just a quick recap where we've been. We've learned where food comes from. It comes from the earth, it comes from nature. Whether you grow it yourself, your neighbor grows it, or a large industrial operation grows it, it grows and it lives from the earth. So that's where food comes from. We've talked about where we can get food. We talked about all the things from growing it yourself all the way to large supermarkets. And now we're getting into the actual food of the food, right? We're getting into the actual ingredients that you're going to be using down the road when we start cooking together. Okay. And I really want you to get a big world view of where these foods grow, what they are, and why they grow in certain areas of the world. So here's our world map. You can download this. It's in the downloads for this lesson. And there's some representative foods on each of the continents. So you can remember, it can just trigger your mind to remember, oh, yeah, there's a lot of rice in Asia. Oh, yeah, a lot of wheat in North America. Those kinds of things. Okay. So where we are now is we've studied North America and we've studied South America, and we're traveling across the Atlantic Ocean here to Europe, which is right in the center of this slide. So we're going into Europe, and here I want you to study up on this slide because we have the world map here again, and we have the world in green, and the black arrows are pointing to the continent of Europe. Now, Europe consists of many different countries, about 32 different countries, and right above that you can see all the different countries in the different colors. Now, I love geography. I would love to sit here and teach you geography, but we're learning about food here in Sizzle Kids. So if you're interested in geography and what countries these are in Europe, have your mom and dad go get you a map of Europe and you can start looking through them. But for now, we're going to talk about what staples grow here and why they grow here. Real quick, let's review what staples are. Staples are the main foods that make up a population's diet. So most people on the earth, 90% of the world's food comes from these 15 staple foods. Some of them are rice, wheat, corn, potatoes. In each different geographical area of the world, there's different staple foods, and it makes up the base of the population's diet in that area. Again, we learned before, but it's so interesting. There's 50,000 edible plants on the earth. So you can eat 50,000 different plants, but just 15 of them make up 90% of our food supply. And those are called the staple foods. And that's what we're learning about here. So over in Europe, we have the staples we have in Europe are potatoes, wheat, and cereals, which are grains and grain grasses. So we get a lot of our different whole grains and grains from the European lands. And the land there also varied from the north to the south and in the middle, but we have the uplands, which is where some of the grains and the grasses are, some of the wheat is, some of the potatoes. We also have the alpine areas. We have huge mountains in Europe as well. And not a lot of this stuff grows there, but that is the land. That is basically what you're going to be seeing when you get into Europe. Again, it's very varied. These are very generalizations about the land, but I just want to give you kids, if maybe you've never been to Europe or thought about Europe, an idea of what it kind of looks like there. The weather is very seasonal. Again, just similar to North America, very seasonal. In South America, you have the tropical weather, which we don't have in North America and we don't have in Europe. So the weather in Europe is much like that of North America. They're on the same latitude, longitude lines, or the longitude lines, which are the lines that go across. So if you look at North America, right across from it is Europe. And so we get a lot of the same types of weather. So in the spring, you'll have a lot of flowers and growing. In the summer, it's warmer. In the fall, the leaves will change colors, and in the winter, you often get snow and cold temperatures. Again, rain and irrigation is the water sources for the staple foods in Europe, and that has been the same for North America, South America, and Europe. The reason I wanted to include that here is because we're about to get into some other areas where the water sources for these staple foods is very different. In Africa and Asia, it's and Australia even, it's very different than North America, South America, and Europe. So that's what we have. You can download this slide and put it up on your wall, and this will help to remind you where Europe is in the world, what kind of staple foods come from Europe, the land, the weather, the water in Europe, and why these staple foods grow there. One of the fun facts about Europe is that it's famous for its gourmet cheeses, right? Now let's think for a second. What staple is cheese? Well, it isn't one of the main plant staples. The plant staples make up 90% of our food in the world, but there are other types of staples as well that we're going to talk about after we go through all the continents. We're going to talk about protein staples, which are meats, and we're going to also talk about dairy staples. And cheese is a dairy staple. Dairy staples are things like cheese, yogurt, milks, these kinds of things. And cheese is one of those. And cheese is just a really big deal in Europe. And they have beautiful, amazing gourmet European cheeses. So they're famous for that. Something fun about Europe. So here's another fun thing about Europe. Let's sit back and enjoy this. These are some sample meals that you may see in Europe. Now, like I said, there's so many different countries in Europe. There's 44 different countries altogether. There's 32 main countries that you'll see in this previous map, but there's also all kinds of little tiny countries, and altogether there's 44 countries in Europe. So in each country, they have very different cultures, and very different foods come out of each different culture. So I've just picked one food from one of the countries to show you a breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and dessert. And I had to leave 39 countries out, so I just picked some that I am familiar with myself. So these is just a little bit of an example, just something fun. If you came over to my house and we were on a food world tour in real life, I might feed you some of the samples from these meals. So for breakfast, these are just pastries in France. France is really big on pastries for breakfast, all different kinds of pastries, which are sweetbreads, basically really delicious breads and croissants and um, cheese danishes and all kinds of different pastries. And not just France has pastries. Lots of the countries of Europe and lots of the countries of the world eat pastries for breakfast, but it's typical in Europe as well. For lunch, I picked France. This is baguette. This is a ham and cheese baguette. The bread part is the baguette part, and France is very famous for its bread. It's baguettes. They have baguette making competitions, and judges come and they judge the very best baguettes on the texture of the bread and how much it rises. And they get very, very in depth on their baguettes. Uh, these long loaves of bread that you cut in half and fill with ham and cheese or anything else, but ham and cheese is a really typical one in France. And just eat it. Just eat the whole thing as a sandwich for lunch in France. So that's kind of a typical lunch you'd see in France. For dinner, I picked Italy. This is a plate of pasta, spaghetti and meatballs to be specific. Lots of pasta in Italy, lots of other things too, and pasta is all over Europe as well, just like it is all over the United States and other countries of the world. But Italy's very well known for its pasta. For snacks, I picked a Bavarian pretzel, a big soft pretzel. We have these here in the United States too, at the movies and at ball games. But in Germany, they are a very typical snack that you would get on the street. Street vendors sell these hot, salted, soft pretzels. And then for dessert, I went back to France because this is creme brulee. This is a very famous dessert. It's basically a vanilla flavored custard, and then it's topped with a sugar topping that is a little blowtorch is used to melt and caramelize the sugar on top, and it creates a hard top. And it's a very fancy, nice dessert from France called creme brulee. You see the Eiffel Tower here that's in Paris, up there on the top, and you see a cow grazing in the Swiss Alps here as well. So these are just some little fun things that you could expect if you went to these particular countries in Europe. Like I said, 44 countries in Europe, lots of other things, beautiful food everywhere, and definitely wherever you travel, try the food of the local country because you'll just be able to learn so much about that country by just going through its food alone. So I have lots of different ideas for classes on different countries and the food in each different country. Like I said, I love food, teaching about food, and I love teaching about geography too. So let's mix the two, and we'll do that in another course. But for here, here's a little example of Europe, and I hope this has been super fun. And next, we're gonna head down south to Africa. I'll see you there.